Yeah, see, so as we interpret the world today, don't look at it as, oh, poor me, things are happening. You got to look at it in terms of these cycles are back again, and others in higher positions of power, and it could be religious with the Vatican and a lot of ancient texts that are rolling through religious traditions across the planet. These cycles are back. So how do you control the masses when you know the cycle's back? You can't salvage this society. It's the repercussions of what is happening electromagnetically. It's a non-salvageable right now, and then go with that and try to salvage something out of it. And the world makes way more sense that we're into the cycle, at least to the point where it's going to disrupt so much that salvaging some would be better than losing all. So when you look at the world, look at it in that way and see why the tech is bringing us to printable foods. All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Guess who came out to visit Celeste Solum? What are we going to talk about today? I'm always about this Tonga eruption ruining Southern Hemisphere crop production. It's coming to the point now where it's measurable. I got this video I've been working on to try to get it out today with Australian temperatures definitely measuring each month a little cooler, where it's measurable after the eruption, which is going to probably take 50% of agricultural production down out of the Southern Hemisphere. So where does that then leave us for the Northern Hemisphere? That's the question. And Celeste, we wanted to talk about cornucopia. We're coming into Thanksgiving, something I hadn't heard really much about, and suddenly, whoosh, this is on the dinner table for me. So, yeah, well, we're just going to have a little tennis session here with the ideas. 12 or 13 years. How long do you think it would take to get people to switch over to be like, all right, that's the food source of choice, that's the viable one, we do it now, it becomes the common one?
Well, I think they're slowly transitioning people from the historic food supply into this impossible burger stuff that's plant-based and maybe a few insects. And then eventually the plants, because we know because of the environmental situation, for many reasons, like volcanoes going off and the grand solar minimum and different things, that vegetables, unless you grow them indoors, might be difficult in the days to come. So then you just take and phase out of the vegetables and then more into the insects, because in most science fiction movies, the insects always survive. You know, the creature from the Dark Lagoon and like those other things.
Yeah, so you have to wonder, like, how are people going to overcome this year without a summer? Because if we go back to Tambora eruption, 1815, we in the Northern Hemisphere didn't lose our crops until the summer of 1816. And before we start, just a quick word from our sponsor. Wall Street's fear gauge is flashing a warning that stocks could fall off a cliff. Billionaire economists agree on two things. We're heading towards a lost decade for the stock market, and investors need to buy gold. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. 888-546-7020. Your IRA can be in physical gold or silver, and you may qualify for the no fee for life IRA. 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. We've gone through our summer, so we're coming into the harvest season. We're going to rest idle up here for the winter. But when we come into our planting season, we're going to experience something very similar to the Southern Hemisphere right now, where they're going into the planting season with the largest eruption in 200 years, spewing the most water vapor out that they've ever recorded. You know, ash is one thing, sulfur dioxide is another, but you're adding a third element in there, all this water vapor blocking sunlight. And I did read a couple new review research papers. They're putting it at minus 1.8 watt per meter squared so far that they've registered decline. That's a lot, because the grand solar minimum and the Maunder minimum only drop 5 total watts per meter squared. And this volcanic eruption just took out 1.8 watts per meter squared.
And the people at government and the military are...
Oh, they're totally aware of this.
They're aware, and they're preparing for themselves.
But how do we prepare? You know, I mean, I would rather rip some glass windows out of my house and make a small greenhouse.
Yes.
You know, there's always solutions for this stuff.
Yeah, I think growing our own indoors, we have to get creative, and it can be done. I've done it myself. The only thing I didn't really try is too many root crops, but I know actually root crops are probably easier than the other crops to grow indoors because you don't have to deal with, so what happens indoors is like aphids and powdery mildew, that type of thing.
If you don't have enough ventilation.
Right. You really need to keep
Fans.
Fans. But, you know, that's problematic if we don't have electricity.
That's why you need solar panels with some sort of battery backup inverter system so you could at least run fans.
Yes.
Even if you have a 1 kW system, like a Jackery 1 kW backup, that'd still be enough to run your 20-watt fans. And then if you could come out and recharge that, you could still do your phones, your comms, your radios, and have your fans running and still do your indoor ag. Because those little pumps, how many watts are those drawing? Like 20, 30 watts on a little water pump that can then irrigate for you on a time system. I don't know, it's going to be a weird, wonky world we're heading into, and I don't know how many people are ready. I mean, we might think we're ready, but when it really does, you're like, we're really ready?
Some insect crawling up your neck by your ear.
Ladybug.
No, it wasn't a ladybug.
Okay.
It was long and black.
Insects don't really bother me anymore.
Yeah, I bet. I remember seeing the pictures when you first moved out here. You know, your legs and your body, you have, like, you were eaten alive, basically, but you must have gotten impervious to bugs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, who's ready for these changes and the things you'll have to, you know, been running out here for a year and a half trying to clear out some of this property. Now, we're banging on the back section over here to be able to get 360 walk around of all the blackberry patch over there. We're putting out some yurts. We're going to have one of the star viewing platforms / yurt right on that hill over there. But being outdoor and getting bit more, you get more of those toxins or whatever those are from the bug bites. You just get used to it eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
Except poison ivy. I still haven't gotten used to that one.
So you have poison ivy here?
Yeah, all over the place.
You have poison oak?
Not so much.
Okay, good.
Now again, the vitamin C, that was the thing on my tongue. I was thinking sumac. Not the poison sumac with the white berries, but the sumac that you see with the red berries. That white powder on them is one of the highest sources of vitamin C in the entire planet for a food species on it, like just a wild forage type of thing. Sumac.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do around my garden is to just browse like a deer through. It's not as safe as it used to be because there's like microbes on that are very healthy for our microbiome or gut. But the problem is these days we have a lot of environmental toxins and stuff raining down from every angle. So it's probably a good idea to not browse the way that I used to. But I have this great resource that I love, and maybe I'm going to share it with you because you should get it. It's awesome. It was written in 1880 to 1885. There's different years. It's called Dr. Chase's Household Receipts and Household Receipts Final Edition. You can get it new as a reprint, or you can get the original. I have the original. I like it because the lady that originally had it wrote her favorite recipes in. It tells you how to plant a fruit tree, animal feed recipes, some that I use, like how to keep your chickens warm in the wintertime and make your animal feed out of root crops. It's got cooking recipes, how to plant every type of plant that you would want, cosmetics, rat poison that I've shared with a lot of people, which is 1 cup of rye flour and I think it's calcium hydroxide, 1 cup each. If you have animals, you want to put it in behind something or under your sink, or You could just use a narrow mouth if you have a dog, a narrow mouth jar. And the nice thing about it is it poisons them. And if they go back into the wall or creepy crawling around your house someplace and you don't find them, they just dry up and there's no odor. So that's nice. It has how to make soap, how to make perfume, how to make furniture polish, and it's all in this like 900-page book, and it is a treat. It's one of my favorite. Like if there was a wildfire bearing down on me, I would take that book as one of my precious things that I would
Page
take.
512, How to Survive a Wildfire.
Yeah. Been there, done that. When I went to Hawaii, how many people do you know are on Maui? They're not even there 24 hours and they survive a wildfire from one of those windmill farms.
Huh.
Yeah.
Statistically not very high, is it?
Yeah. I mean, welcome to Maui, you know.
Get all the grass burning. Yeah, they get some ferocious grass fires over there, like field grass fires. Whew. And then if they get the howling winds or whatever.
Yeah, this was licking. They let 100 cars go through, licking flames on either side. It looked like Dante's Inferno. It was nuts. And that's one reason that it didn't break my heart. David and I had a off-grid place on the top of a mountain in Montana. And I saw this pillar of smoke on a distant hill, but I realized how fast that could come at me. And he was out at work. I have 15 goats, 33 chickens, and a golden retriever. Could I get all those animals off the mountain before I was consumed by wildfire? I probably could get the goats to follow me because that's their nature. I had that relationship. The chickens would be toast and the golden retriever would come down. But I would have had to hike out 8 miles to the road. So whether I could do
You
it
can't,
that
you know, if
fast-
you're going up the hill, I mean, just look at the topography around here. 8 miles to this, up and down, while the fire's bearing down on you. You have to hunker down on somewhere over in one of these stream beds and hope for the best.
Yeah, and then you've got the whole wildfire smoke that we were talking
Smoke
about
is
earlier.
I mean, the fire, yeah, okay, the smoke is really the danger.
Yeah. So what cold weather preps are you doing?
We're trying to get our chickens into like really reinforced nesting boxes or roosts where we can close that thing up and get them out of the rain, because this year is supposed to be, and I will say, irregardless of the Tonga eruption, it was supposed to be a brutal winter here anyway, because in this valley around here, if it gets foggy in August, the old timers say the more the days of fog in August, the more snow days there'll be in the winter. Well, this year it was fogging in July.
Oh.
Yeah, they're talking once in 100+ year winter cold coming in, and that was just from the old timers talking. But then we had the Tonga eruption coming, and that could have played into it too. Who knows? But with that, you're definitely going to get, I'm going to say, a very solid 1.5 degrees Celsius drop globally, if not more. Because you got to think about Pinatubo, which was an eruption in the Philippines in 1991 in June of 91. That cooled the entire planet 0.7. Not quite, a little over 0.5 degree, but not quite 1 degree Celsius. And crop yields were really low that year. But this year coming in, I mean, that ash went up 52 miles into the atmosphere. More than double than what happened in Pinatubo. Is like, you know, a good 25, 27 miles. So it's going to get chilly. And it's going to be brutally extended winter and the spring. And this is the whole thing, is getting the greenhouse ready to be able to get our starters to the point where they're already this big and they're ready to go out immediately. Plus, we just replanted the winter garden, and then I'm gonna mulch. I've got a whole bunch of mushroom compost here. It's been sitting out for the year under tarps, and we're gonna load up a good 1/4 to 1/2 inch on top and see what we can do about getting our winter garden up and running. The beets, kale, kohlrabi, these time of mustard greens, this turnips, These types of things will last pretty well too, and you can get it. You get your microgreens and your leafy greens and your vitamins out of that, minerals. But as soon as the spring hits, whoosh, they're off to the races.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's a cakewalk. But when I wrote my first book, which is a history book, when they had that cold weather from in the early 1800s, is when my family was going from New Jersey to Ohio. These are people that lived basic. They had all the skill sets, and they were used to brutal weather, and they didn't have the luxuries of modern living, and they had a tough time. Stories are passed down of how difficult it was. And then we've got the whole celestial thing. So one of the stories is passed down is the night in 1833, the night the stars fell. Have you heard that one?
I remember there's like 10,000 shooting stars an hour.
Yeah, and so it was funny. So it was in the fall. The women were making apple butter because it was fall. And there were some men that were at home and reading the newspaper with hurricane lanterns, and then there were some at the tavern. And the men with the lanterns turned off the hurricane lamps because you could see and read the newspaper without. It was like daytime. And the men at the bar, they said, if the end of the world is coming, we don't want to die at the bar. So they went home. And
that's the opposite of today's world.
Yeah, it's a fantastic read. So if you are a history buff at all, look up that 1833 night that the stars fell. It really is spectacular. And another one that was handed down, and I didn't know that it was true, but it is, that during the Civil War, there was a flag over the South, a rippling American flag over the South, and it was the Aurora Borealis came down, but it was in the shape and the colors of the American flag.
Yeah, that would have been one of those outliers, Carrington event. That was 59? Would have been another one.
No, wasn't it? The Civil War, wasn't that
1860
to 64 or something like that?
Yeah. They talked about seeing those red auroras down in Cuba. So think about how intense that would have been. Anything would have been fried. If you're seeing red auroras in Cuba, which are intense, red's like a really intense color, and then it goes white, and then it's just pure energy at that point coming in.
Yeah.
Those protons, electrons, whatever, just flying in on the field lines. But how much of this are we going to witness? A lot of ladybugs around. We're having like this ladybug infestation. If you love ladybugs, come out to the farm. We got about 500 million of them out here flying around right now. But how do you think just the average person would react? Just think about the 10,000 shooting stars an hour. Like, how would the average person react to seeing that anyway?
Well, these days they probably think that it was a war, that it was missiles, incoming missiles, I would think. I don't know that they would interpret it as shooting stars, because we really haven't seen an event like that. We see one shooting star, we make a wish, but we don't necessarily, think. We might think, we're being attacked or invaded or something like that.
Yeah, because if we saw red auroras wafting above our heads here in a modern time, people would be like, what is that red light? That's scary. But most people don't even understand where tomatoes come from, so how are they supposed to interpret red auroras that are supposed to be in the Arctic Circle way down? A lot of things are going to be beyond the comprehension to even understand what it means. Like, that would actually bend people's minds.
Well, we're actually now starting to see the things that space weather enthusiasts such as myself and you have known for a while were going to come, is the lightning coming from the earth going up instead of lightning from the clouds coming down. It's starting to come up from the earth, and that is a signal that things are changing as far as our earth. And the things that we've known but ancient man saw it, and they tried to warn us in their petroglyphs and hieroglyphs.
Yeah, see, so as we interpret the world today, don't look at it as, oh, poor me, things are happening. You got to look at it in terms of these cycles are back again, and others in higher positions of power, and it could be religious, with the Vatican, and a lot of ancient texts that are rolling through religious traditions across the planet. These cycles are back. So how do you control the masses when you know the cycle's back? You can't salvage this society. It's the repercussions of what is happening electromagnetically. It's a non-salvageable right now, and then go with that and try to salvage something out of it. And the world makes way more sense that we're into the cycle, at least to the point where it's going to disrupt so much that salvaging some would be better than losing all. So when you look at the world, look at it in that way and see why the tech is bringing us to printable foods, why they want you in habitation zones. And I'd seen some interviews with the WEF crowd, and they're like, well, we're trying to save people by bringing them into this ark. I'm like, well, I don't want to be food in your ark or something, But the twisted logic of that is not everybody can survive this. So we're going to try to save part of humanity at least, milk the wealth and extract as much wealth, metals and this sort of thing, and then start over after the cycle finishes. That's where we're at, truly where we're at. We are in a once in a 12,000 year cycle or something even greater. And our current civilization can't be salvaged. So what would you do as a ruler of a planet or the elite on a planet? Would you tell everybody?
Well, what they did is they've gone underground. That's hence all the underground tunnels and bases and this and that we hear about. And the last time this happened, man could go underground, and they were sheltered. And we see their drawings on, in the caves. But now just think about it, the government, the military has access to the underground caves. Other caves have been turned into parks. So the average person does not have access to caves that they once used to. Once you could just go into a cave.
Yeah, I'll say that. Almost every cave around here is, if it's not on your own private property, it's gated off. Yeah. And here's the thing about TVA. They take the first 200 feet off the land, anywhere around the lake. So once they flooded and did the dam projects, everything flooded up, and they get the 200 feet off the shoreline, which is, and if there were any of those caves, that would be mid-hill. Usually they're up there. Everything's gated off. You really can't go in anywhere now. We don't have any caves really as such on this land here. I've been looking for them and been asking the neighbors over here. They grew up as kids, hunted all over this place for like 3 generations. They tell me there's some caves on the backside of that mountain over there. And there's another one down where the stream was, where we can pass one of the fields, and it goes through into the mountain. And sometimes if the rain falls too much, that whole field will flood because the water can't go into the cave fast enough off the stream. Otherwise, you would just think it's a stream, but it leads into an underground thing that goes back 3 or 4 miles into and then it winds its way out on the other side. Like, you can walk through there if you're a spelunker and it's not rained. You can get through there, and it's kind of a fun thing people do, but you got to get permission from the owner, and they got to know you, and you got to have some caving experience, because you get stuck 2 miles deep in there and your lights go out, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I just watched a documentary on that. I think it was something like Malaysia or Indonesia, I think it was. And it was
like super big cave system.
It was a big cave system, and these kids went down in it. And then one of them got stuck, and there was a huge get the kids out. And I think one kid didn't make it, and then they had to actually knock the kids out with anesthesia and then put breathing apparatus on them, and because it would have terrified the kids. And so they flew in splunkers from all over the world for that operation. But you don't want to get yourself into trouble in a cave when it's rained. If you're not familiar with the cave system, or splunking, I wouldn't do it. But it's prudent to explore the caves in your area if you do have some, and get to know the caves and their nature. How, what does rain do to that cave? What doesn't it do? And when you could safely enter and not. David and I found a place in Montana that was like an old mine. And so we were thinking that would be a good place if there was a nuclear exchange or something. Would it be the most fun place? You just camp out in this old mine, but it would have. It had a lot of rock and dirt over us, so we would have been safe, from any radiological fallout, which these days you gotta be a little concerned about.
And going insane living underground and getting so claustrophobic that you'll lose your mind is another thing. Because I've been into a few underground cities. Darren Yanku I went back to, and lived in the 1990s when it was way more open than it was now. And right now they cordoned a lot of it off. It's only for this light here. But back in the day, you could hire somebody to take you further in there. And then we were in Neumo, which is part of Czech Republic, way out in the wine growing region just before you cross over to Austria. They had a city there, underground, almost unknown. 20,000 people lived underground. And, we got in there and I started getting a little claustrophobic. I just don't like it. Either place I'd been in the underground cities where people truly lived for years on end, I would never want to live there. It's just terrifyingly claustrophobic, and you feel like, oh, I gotta get out of here.
But you were going in a time of relative peace. Those people went down, either they knew that there was space weather or an invading force. And if there were invaders that were going to kill you and your family, the fear of that probably would have negated your, claustrophobia, because it's kind of like, okay, you got a pain in your arm, or you can hurt your finger or something, and then all of a sudden the pain in your arm doesn't hurt anymore. So I think that, if this invading force, I think that you would be able to adapt at a quicker rate because your survival depended on it. And it's fascinating how these people, there was a level for the animals and a level for this thing, housing, and a level for cooking areas, and they would have these vents that went up. It's fascinating. Did you go to Göbekli Tepe?
No, it wasn't discovered then.
Okay.
Yeah, that whole Göbekli Tepe thing was not even discovered until pretty recently. At the time that I went to Gorme down in Turkey, and in there, they got all kind of underground stuff, and Göbekli Tepe is one of the biggest ones that's known, but 12 kilometers or even just 6-8 miles from there's another whole series of underground cities, and it's Tepe something as well. It's something else or other Tepe, but it seems like that is normal to go underground. And there's all these cities all over the planet, and dolmens and all these things that have been when I drove you up from town, there used to be a bunch of Indian burial mounds out in that big flat area out there, 100 of them, and they all got bulldozed and flattened over the last 120 years or something.
So did the locals say they had giants in them?